Welcome back to Good Better Broker as we bring in Jalen Scott. He is a co-owner and co-founder of Belong Lending based here in Metro Detroit. Jalen, great to have you with us.
Hey, good to be on, Justin.
So it's funny because most of the time our guests are seasoned mortgage brokers, right?
Yep.
They've been in the business for years, if not decades. So we're switching things up a little bit because relatively speaking, you are a newbie as a mortgage loan originator. You are coming up on your 1-year anniversary. It was May of 2023 that you started originating loans.
Yep.
So as we get into the conversation, what are your reflections on year one?
Yeah, first of all, I really appreciate you having me on. I do think, starting in this industry isn't easy, obviously. So in terms of reflections, it's a lot harder than I thought it'd be. First of all, I think a lot of people think they're transitioning over into, a similar work style and work amount, but you're working twice as hard. But reflection wise, I'm really grateful. I've had a good year. I'm on pace, to be honest with you, just full transparency, to do about 3 loans a month, which is exceeding what I wanted to do personally. So I'm more than paying my bills, which I think is what anyone who starts in the mortgage industry or starts a business hopes to do. So it's been great.
Yeah, this is really important stuff, especially for those newer clients of ours, those newer brokers and LOs who are listening to this, because you do have that experience now of having been through the first year as an LO. So walk me through your keys to success. What would you say have been the things that have helped you most?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you're new. There's a lot of established faces in the real estate world. It's a small community. So you really need to do your best at branding yourself and making yourself be seen. So I spent a lot of time finding myself on social media. I didn't have any social media for the last 7 years of my life. I wasn't an Instagram person. I wasn't a Facebook person, but I knew how important it was for a business owner. So a huge part of my success was just finding what worked for me social media wise and really using it as an opportunity to introduce myself to the real estate community, whether that be potential homeowners, potential realtors, or whoever it may be in the industry.
Yeah, your line, I believe, about social media, the way that you look at it is it's an opportunity, essentially, for people to meet you before they actually meet you.
Exactly, yeah. I think, obviously a lot of people try their best to have a good Google presence, a good website, which are all important. But I just think, when you Google someone's name, a lot of times their social media links come up, and most people spend a lot of time on social media. And it's a unique opportunity to, use your personal life and your business life to create content around who you are, because people usually work with who they know, like, and trust. When you get down to it, you can meet with all the realtors you want, but it boils down to, do they know you, which social media helps you do, and do they like you, which is another big part of that. And then you can build trust through it as well. It's
got to be especially true for the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Z crowd. If they're doing their research on someone like you, someone they want to get a mortgage through, chances are pretty good they're going to go to your social media pages.
100%. And then I think, TikTok, which is something that I've spent a good amount of time on, it's like a YouTube almost. Someone will say, like, how to get a mortgage, or what's the process of getting a mortgage, or best places to travel. You type in keywords and it gives you a good video. So they're going to find you there and hopefully get information there. And I think Facebook and Instagram are a good place to, again, introduce yourself, spend a good amount of money creating branded content to yourself individually. This is who I am. This is what I do. Almost as a, hey, you're walking into my office. This is who I am personally and professionally.
All right, so tell us a bit more about your content strategy specifically, because I've seen your videos. Mm-hmm. You definitely have your own style of doing it. Mm-hmm. How have you approached the content, especially from a video standpoint, and how has that helped you get in front of more people?
Yeah. In terms of how I approached it, I kind of went in blind. I think a lot of people will do their best to mimic other people's content, which isn't a bad place to start. And if you can go down any content creator, not that I am, but if you go down anyone's rabbit hole of content that they've built, you're going to see that their content has changed over time. So my advice for anyone that is looking to build content is just start, because it's going to change. So I did spend a lot of time on TikTok. I've made long form, short form, but my approach now is I want to be engaging and I want to educate people. I think you need to have both in order to successfully have content, and you might not realize it, some of the stuff you're watching, but both are happening at the same time. So I try to spend 60 seconds being engaging, whether it's using humor or just good cameras or quality, being engaging, and then using the rest of the time to educate people. Small things that they can use to, how much do you need to buy a home? What's down payment, interest rates, all that stuff.
You mentioned humor, and I want to ask you about this because there are some people out there on social media who keep it very straight-laced, very educational, and they don't veer too far off course from what it is they do. Especially early on for you, I feel like a lot of the videos I saw, you tried to intentionally be funny and even poke fun at yourself.
Yeah.
Why?
One, I think I started off mimicking a lot of people's content. I go to TikTok, and how I would start I would go to TikTok and just scroll and find something that made me laugh, whether it's a sound or a premise, and I'd say, I'm going to make that mortgage related. And I use humor mainly because it's who I am. I love to laugh. I love to joke. So I leaned into that, and it worked. It was a great way to, introduce myself to certain people.
The point you just made, I think, is an important one. Just doing your research. I mean, you said this to me when we were talking before the interview. You're a consumer first.
Yeah.
You're out there on social media, but you're not just doing it to waste time. You're actually going through and seeing what other people are creating, seeing what idea could translate well to mortgage. How big of an opportunity do you think that is for other younger LOs, newer LOs, to basically come up with ideas? Because as you know, one of the main reasons why people don't post content on social media is because they don't know what to post.
Yeah. Wait, can you ask that one more time?
Sure. How big of an opportunity do you think it is for newer LOs to just simply do their own research on social media, see what content works well, and see what content would then translate well to something mortgage related?
Yeah, I think it's super important. Like I said, I leaned into what I knew and what I consumed as a consumer. So I think it's super easy to find things that are engaging that you like and put a mortgage spin on it. Because like at the end of the day, you can make endless amounts of content around being in mortgages, but if people aren't interested in the stuff that you're making, they're not going to watch it. So you've got to, again, find a balance between being educational and having something that people want to watch that's engaging. And I just happen to like humor.
All right, so we've covered the social media aspect. I want to zoom out for a moment, though, and just talk a bit more about the way you have approached this first year for you as a mortgage loan originator. And one of the big things for you is being all in. And really just throwing your entire self into this and not, venturing into any other business paths. This has really become your identity, and that has been very much intentional.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm grateful to have the opportunity to, not need another job or be able to lean on my savings, because frankly, I did have to. But I do think in anything you do, if you're not going to give 100% into it, you're not going to be successful, especially something that is 100% commission. Some people, I think one thing I learned from leaving my desk job was I could come in and hang out for 5 hours a day and get paid the same amount. And, I was perfectly fine. But, you transition out into the mortgage world where you're 100% commission, you're doing your own thing. That doesn't fly. You're not wasting company time anymore. You're wasting your own time. So, I think if you're someone who wants to transition into being a loan officer, it's not a side hustle. No one's going to say, no one's going to respect the loan officer that does it on the side. It's the biggest financial decision they'll ever make. So make sure that you're a professional and you treat it as such.
You also believe, Jalen, that progress in this business is not necessarily linear.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in most sales roles, you're not going to see hey, I called X amount of realtors, I'm going to see X amount of results. And I think most people that have worked sales understand that, but there are people that transition out of, a more traditional role into the mortgage world. And I think it's important to understand that you're going to be working 24 hours a day, or not 24 hours, but 24/7, and not necessarily always see results. Whereas if you were in, a traditional salary role, you work 8 hours, you're getting, exactly what you're getting. So it's going to have a more exponential progression where you're going to spend so much time in the lift off of your business, but hopefully when you're up in orbit, you're kind of coasting. You set things in process and business is somewhat automated. But I think it's that initial, we'll call it 2 years that most people get discouraged by. They're like, man, I'm doing all these things, I'm not necessarily seeing the results. And it's not intended to be that way.
What is it like to prepare yourself for that mentally? Or is it something that you have to experience first to then really know what it feels like to be, like you said, dialed in 24 hours a day and know that you're going to put in sometimes more work than you get results from it? I mean, how do you describe what that has felt like for you?
Yeah, for me personally, when I left, I was prepared only because I knew, hey, this isn't something that I prepared myself for worst case. I said, hey, this is something that will take time to build. So if you're someone who is hoping to have success, and I'm not necessarily being pessimistic about it, but I think you have to be prepared to have setbacks. Have a savings account. Ask yourself if you're comfortable, giving everything. Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Are you comfortable restarting in a career? What does that look like? Have you done it before? So prepare yourself mentally so that when those setbacks come, you're not as drawn back. And I always remind myself, when setbacks come, I tell myself, like, you knew it would be like this. You told yourself you'd be in this position. So just reset and keep moving.
That kind of dovetails into the next thing I want to ask you about, which is just, the impact on your life. I'm not even talking about business. I'm talking about, your self-confidence, your daily structure, your health, your priorities. I mean, this is all tied together because this is, like you said, a huge part of your identity now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is your identity. You are Jalen Scott, loan officer. This is who you are. So I think when you're selling yourself, because that's what you're selling, people work with who they know, like, and trust. You're selling yourself now. So it takes a lot of reflection, like, am I the person that someone would want to buy a home from or get a mortgage through? So you've got to check yourself financially. You got to check yourself health-wise, all the things that you're doing in your life. Are you spending too much time, just hanging out with the wrong people, going out, all those things. So that's something that I think most people will come to find is the successful loan officers. It is who they are. It's not, it's not one of those careers that you clock out from and you're done with. You are a loan officer and you're selling yourself. So you need to make sure that you are happy with who you are and you've checked all those other boxes personally.
Is that something in your mind that you have to be aware of in advance? Or is it something that you quickly figure out once you get into, this profession, this job, and you figure out what it takes?
You quickly find it out because, you're going to have setbacks. So you're going to face a lot of self-doubt. And you're going to say, am I the right person? You're going to have trouble presenting yourself online. And I think anyone that's made content has had that. So I think it's something that will quickly be presented to you, so you should be aware and ready for it.
All right. Before we started recording, you were saying, at the end of the day, the most important thing is finding the loans. That's the biggest key for any mortgage loan originator, including yourself. So from your perspective, how do you go about it? Or how have you gone about it, starting with your focus on purchase business?
Yes. So when you're a new loan officer, there's not a lot of clients you can refinance because you don't have any. So, I made it a concerted effort to say, okay, well, I need to focus on purchase business. I need to build relationships. So I went after real estate agents, and that kind of ties into social media in the sense that I wanted to use social media to introduce myself to people. So my approach was, build content, have a log of information where people understand that I'm educated and they can also meet me, so that when I'm reaching out, I've already knocked down a layer, as opposed to if I'm just calling and say, hey, I just started my business, I'm hoping that I can do X, Y, Z. Every lender says the same thing. But again, getting back to the people work with who they know, like, and trust. If you can present yourself online well enough to partners that want to work with you, I think you'll have an easier approach to meeting and having those conversations and details with them. So that's what I did.
What about finding your people?
Yeah.
Just not overthinking it in maybe even in terms of your neighborhood or friends. Yeah. I mean, how has that impacted the way that you've gotten business?
Yeah, and I think, it's easy to think large scale. I want to grow in so many other states, and that's definitely something that I'm working on. But if you were to just look at your neighborhood, your city, and how many homes were selling in your city, and if you got all that business, you would be a top producing loan officer. So sometimes it's okay to niche down, and people are scared to do that, to niche down on your local market and focus on, again, the people that are your people. People work with who they know, like, and trust.
I feel like you believe that.
I believe it to a T, because I've probably met with almost 40 realtors in a year, and I haven't gotten business from 40 realtors. And that's not because I didn't have anything of value or that they didn't have business. It was that the realtors that worked with me were always going to work with me as long as I knew what I was doing. So yeah, I think if a newer loan officer could just focus on their market and find realtors that they click with and find ways they create content that makes sense to them, people will find them. There are hundreds of thousands. You're not going to get hundreds of thousands. How do you get 10 this month?
So people you click with, or another way of saying it, as the younger peeps like to say, people you vibe with, right? Yeah. Is that for you like a big part of the way that you approach meetings with realtors? Is that something that you are very keenly aware of when you are talking to them? Like, is this somebody who I'm going to be able to connect with on a of course, business level, but also on a personal level as well?
Absolutely. I think after, again, I meet with 40 realtors and I'm working with 5, I sit back and go, okay, is it me? What is it? But I think eventually you say, man, I got one deal from this realtor and I'm getting none from this one. Maybe we just didn't vibe. I knocked the loan out of the park. So that's definitely something that I'm actively doing now, that I've learned. Hey, I need to find my people I vibe with. And when I do initial, coffee meetings or lunch or however I connect with realtors, I don't talk about business for the first 30, 45 minutes. It's simply, what got you into real estate? What do you do? And I treat it almost as a date. I'm just trying to get to know that person. So I think that's a good way to, again, get the walls down so you guys can both introduce each other and know them personally.
If you could go back, a year ago, as we said, you're coming up on your 1-year anniversary now, and you were at the start, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Or what have you learned during this first year that you wish you knew beforehand?
That's a really good question. I think do your job. I think, you're going to want to learn the entire process, but 90% of your effort in a mortgage career is the first 2 years, and 90% of your effort as a loan officer should be before you ever even submit the loan. Meaning, if I have a client and I'm having a phone call with them, an initial consult, how smooth is that conversation? How easy is your app intake? How well do you explain fees? How simply can you help them understand the interest rate environment? How comfortable is your realtor throughout the pre-approval process? Are they confident in your pre-approval? That would have netted me probably an additional 10 loans in a year. I've lost so many loans and I've had to take my losses because I just didn't do a well enough job at those steps. Once the loan is in, you should have already sold the rate. You should have already sold the fees. They should know exactly within 90% of what they're going to pay, and they should be able to envision the finish line with you. So if I could go back, I'd tell myself, spend a lot of time mastering those steps. Once the loan's in, you're like, okay, I got to get HOI, I got to do this. It's like not your job anymore. Have someone for that. Focus on the front.
Okay, so now to spin this forward, I want to get your advice and your message for others who are thinking about doing this for a career. Maybe there's somebody in retail who's listening to this and they are going to become an independent mortgage broker. What are a few pearls of wisdom that you would offer up to them?
Yeah. In terms of those transitioning from a retail space, I think there's so many great loan officers in the retail space that don't necessarily need a retail name, that have a name in their community. They're already a broker. They've already done the hard job of building a brand. They just don't have necessarily the benefits. They don't have the freedom and flexibility. They don't have the opportunity to spend money where they see to grow their business. So I would say, if you feel like you're an experienced loan officer and you're already getting business because of your name and not your company name, you should already be considering it. If you're a retail loan officer that's looking, or if you're a retail loan officer that's maybe newer, there's a ton of good brokers that are on a larger scale that provide support. And support is good for someone who's relatively new, but it doesn't necessarily need to come from a retail space. There's a lot of brokers that provide training, and you can leverage other people in the industry to help you get there.
That's actually an interesting point that you make, because you started as a mortgage loan originator and then became a broker owner. Was that a part of the plan from the start, or did something change along the way that made you say to yourself, I think I want to go and be an owner?
It was definitely a plan from the start. I didn't quit my well-paying job, frankly, to not own it. And it's not something that I would advise someone do immediately. I was blessed enough to have great partners. I've got two other co-founders and co-owners, Demetrius Holloway and Antoinette Martin, that I worked with at my initial broker shop. And I would tell them, hey, this is something I want to do eventually. But they're producing, they're comfortable in the space they're in. Fate has it that we needed to find a new place anyway, and we decided, let's just do this together. And I think, if I had tried to go off and do that by myself, I would in no way have the brand that we have locally in our market currently in the first 3 months. And a lot of people don't realize how new our company is, but we've already done a great job building a team of loan officers. I think we're up to about 9. I've been building a brand with agents because we did it together. And I think there's a lot of people that try to go off and build, Jalen Scott Mortgage. This is, Justin White Mortgage. And we really focused on, how do we build a team where it's a team? It's not, hey, this is my company and you're working for it. We are loan officers that happen to be owners, not owners. And I think there are a lot of mortgage brokers that take it the owner route. They just say, how do I build a business? And we're like, how do we build a team where if we were in the seat, we would get what we want? So it's not something I would advise for a first-year loan officer. I would definitely strongly recommend finding a good team, but then know that it's partners like UWM provide a ton of good resources that we leverage to build when you're ready. So once you have the established pipeline, once you feel comfortable, you understand what a mortgage call report is, all the technology, then make the jump.
Well, we are happy for you.
Yeah.
Thrilled that you found a place where you belong. No pun intended. I've told you this before. I love the name of the company. I think what you guys are doing is outstanding, and we appreciate you sharing your experiences, your insights, and of course, we wish you nothing but the best moving forward. Jalen Scott from Belong Lending. Thanks for being here, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Good Better Broker and helping us support independent mortgage brokers everywhere. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about new videos, as well as your preferred podcast platform for a new episode every other Tuesday.